Hello, I'm Alistair McIntyre. I'm producing this video about Osmth, and this is the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, which is often shortened to the initials OSMTH, or as we call it Osmth, or even SMOTJ. Basically, I was looking around the web and YouTube and various places to see what information was available about the order. And I did find, while there's a lot of videos and documentaries about the Knights Templars, I didn't see there was much information about Osmth and the actual way we operate and our views and aims of the organisation. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to produce this little video, which actually might end up being a bit longer, because basically I want to read you 3 documents which I think explains the order very well. The first article is going to be about the Brussels Declaration, which is our core document that sets the scene for what we do as an order and what our ambitions are. The second article I'm going to read is actually the foreword by our past Grand Master about what we believe to be the definitive history of the order, both ancient and modern, taking us right up to the 21st century. And then the third document I want to read is actually an introduction to the Grand Priory of Canada, because this is where I live at the moment. And I think between these 3 documents you'll get a really good view of Osmth. After that, I will start to tell you a little bit about how we work and how you get to join the order and how you get promoted within the order and so forth. So I'm hoping by the end of the video you'll get a good understanding of who we are and what we do and what we aim to do. So without further ado, let me give you a little bit of background on myself. Basically, as I say, my name's Alistair McIntyre. I'm actually what they call a Grand Officier of the Temple of Jerusalem here within the Grand Priory of Canada. I'm also the newsletter editor for the quarterly publication, the Knights Templar, which is normally about 60 odd pages or so. My full-time occupation is actually as web publisher and editor of 2 websites, the first of which is electricscotland.com. Electricscotland.com is essentially the history of Scotland and the history of the Scots, both at home and abroad. I emigrated from Scotland in 2005 to Canada and subsequently became a Canadian citizen as well. And under that guise, I created the site electriccanadian.com, which is a similar site to do with the history of Canada and the Canadians. And it's on that site that I also host archival material from the Grand Priory of Canada. So obviously my interest was always in history as to what we're doing today. So that was partly why I joined the order, because I had actually written about the Knights Templars prior to becoming a member. And when I came to Canada, I got invited to join the St. James Priory in Toronto, which I subsequently did. And since then I've just been moving in the order and doing what I can to help. So that's my brief background. So without further ado, I'm going to start reading you these few documents. As this is going to be mostly audio, you might want to walk around or rather just watching me reading all the time. But I think these are important documents. And I will, when I post the video up, put some links to a text message underneath the video where you can go to learn more or reread some of these documents I'm reading to you. So without further ado, let's start with the Brussels Declaration, which was basically launched on 13th of October 2007. It's headed up Osmth, Knights Templar International, aiding humanity on the pilgrimage through life. And it starts with our vision. It says, today Osmth, Knights Templar International, looks for a world in which a constructive dialogue between the great religious faiths and the individuals and nations that adhere to them is conducted in an atmosphere of mutual respect, understanding and peace. The holy sites of Christianity and the other great faiths are respected, protected, and maintained, and pilgrims can travel to them in safety. The dedication, generosity, and integrity of all those engaged in providing humanitarian aid are recognised and valued, and aid workers carry out their vital work in an ethical manner without fear of discrimination. The principles of active charity, courtesy, dedication, and honesty inherent in the highest ideals of a code of chivalry and a personal rule of life are spread wider and wider in society. And the contribution of the Knights Templar, medieval and modern, with regard to agriculture, construction, transportation, crafts, medicine, finance, interfaith affairs, diplomacy, and philanthropy is both well researched and also widely understood and valued by the public. The commitment. Osmth, Knights Templar International, aspires to be the modern organisation the original Knights Templar might have become if their historical development had not been broken. Like other orders of military or monastic origins, without traditions stem from Jerusalem, in the Middle East, in the Middle Ages, our membership has long ago put aside swords for purely ceremonial use and turned in attention as a civil society organisation to charitable, cultural, humanitarian and reconciliation endeavours. In our members today, we look for Christians sufficiently confident in their own beliefs to respect and value the beliefs of those of other faiths and of none. Today's Templars in Osmth, Knights Templar International, seek by their collective action and individual personal example to put into practice in the modern world the highest ideals of the code of chivalry and the personal role of Christian life inspired by the spiritual father of the medieval order, St. Bernard of Clairvaux. Our modern order also adheres to the principles adopted by the General Assembly of the Order of the Temple in Paris in 1841, in that our membership is open to Christians of all denominations and from all social backgrounds. We operate as an openly accountable, democratic and non-political organisation. Our members have a duty to promote the causes of peace and human dignity, and our work in humanitarian aid is undertaken for the benefit of the diverse strands of all humanity. And finally, our actions. In addition to the local and national activities of each of its constituent member Grand Priories, Osmth Knights Templar International undertakes a range of collective programs around the world. In choosing and implementing these collective international programs, our modern order particularly seeks to promote dialogue amongst and between the Abrahamic faiths and the other great religions of the world, with a view to establishing better understanding and greater tolerance. To assist Christian communities around the world, and especially in the Holy Land, whenever their human rights are at risk. To build bridges of understanding and support between the Eastern and Western churches of the Christian faith, and, as a UN-recognised non-governmental organisation, to support the United Nations and other international civil society organisations by our active participation in programmes of disaster relief, humanitarian aid, peace building and sustainable development that respects the full range of human diversity. So that's the Brussels Declaration, which is a core of what our order intends to do and is doing. So that sets the scene. I felt the next thing I should read to you is the foreword to the book, which is called The History of the Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, from 1118 to 2005. It's by Chevalier Leo Thys, KCTJ, who unfortunately died recently. But the foreword of the book I thought was particularly good, and it was actually written by Rear Admiral, who's now retired, James J. Carey, GCTJ and GMTJ, who was the Grand Master of the Order at the time. I read that forward and I thought it was really, really good, and so I want to read it to you. It's a wee bit lengthy, but I think it's well worth you listening to. And having read it, if you feel you want to purchase the book, I will have a link to where you can get that book along with this video. So let me start telling you what Admiral Carey was saying. He said, "When author Leon Thys first asked me to read the draft version of his upcoming Templar book, I agreed to do so during a particularly busy time in my life. So I printed it out and put the pages into a folder to read later. I must honestly say that my initial reaction was another Knights Templar book. What is there to say that hasn't already been said in the 200 plus books that have already been written on the Templar Order over the past 900 years? I now admit this reaction could not have been more wrong. I read what Leo sent me and have concluded that whether the subject is ancient Templar history or recent Templar accomplishments, he has captured the ancient history portions, often confused and rambling by others, into concise, short summaries of the more important occurrences in the medieval history of the Order. And equally, if not more so, for modern Templar history, he has captured important achievements and accomplishments that I have not seen in any other Templar books. But probably most important, he takes on the topic of the Knights Templar in our modern day, while many of those that have been a part of that history are still alive and can provide that history in their own words from their own memories. These are people that were actually present at the events as they transpired and as the Order progressed through the mid and late 20th century and into the new millennium. He includes histories and events never before published, and he provides documents and narratives never before shared or seen by anyone outside of the Order, or for that matter by many within the Order. He documents for all time, and in the words and memories of the Templars that attended the events, the history and progress and growth and expansion of the modern Templar Order, so that all who wish will know the factual accounts and the personal observations of these Templar knights and dames while they are still alive on the earth and while their memories have not yet been dimmed by the labours of life and the fading remembrances of age. There's actually a lot more to that, but I'll give you a link to that so you can read the full article review of the book and get hold of the book. So, the final bit I want to read you is about the Knights Templar in Canada. I feel this document gives you an interesting kind of slant on things. So here's what the article says. It says, on behalf of our more than 5,000 knights and dames of the Knights Templar worldwide, we welcome you to our page for the largest Knight Templar Order in the world, and the only Templar Order recognised in special consultative status by the United Nations. Our official name is, and this is in Latin, so I'm going to get it wrong, but it's Ordo Supremus Militaris Templari Heros Militani. I told you I was going to have problems with that word. It's Latin for the Sovereign Military Order of the Templar of Jerusalem, and often shortened to the initials OSMTH or SMOTJ. Our order was founded on the principles first adopted by the original Templar Knights in France in the year 1118 and carried out in those early days from their home in the Temple of Solomon in the holy city of Jerusalem, which was provided for them by the then King of Jerusalem, Baldwin II. In these modern times, Osmth is international in nature, with members from over 40 nations, ecumenical Christians in our religious beliefs, welcoming members of all Christian religions, and focused on matters of human rights, political and religious freedom, and humanitarian aid to the world's less fortunate. We are officially recognised by the United Nations in special consultative status and furnish Osmth official delegates to United Nations in New York City, Vienna and Geneva. Like the Knights Templars of old, we operate as a modern-day worldwide network of educated professionals in such widely diverse protocols as senior government officials, members of the diplomatic corps, senior clergy, military officers, physicians and surgeons, engineers, historians, and humanitarian aid caregivers. Osmth represents many of the most respected and credible senior officials in their home nations, providing both a highly respected body of expertise and influential voice to support commitment to the less fortunate of the world and to promote the time-tested chivalric ideas of honour, honesty, civility, tolerance, care for a fellow man, and support for ecumenical religious faith throughout our individual nations and throughout the world community. We often find ourselves working with and through other chivalric orders, the senior leadership of other nations, and with other non-governmental organisations as NGOs, in order to provide humanitarian aid and other involvement in resolution of serious humanitarian needs or political, ethnic and religious conflict. Engaging the respect and credibility of our world membership in their home nations, we're able to bring resolution and assistance in matters that quite often become bogged down in the bureaucracy of governments and regulations. Our objectives include the international promotion of intercultural and interreligious contacts and worldwide networks in order to help build bridges of brotherhood between nations and cultures, as well as individual good works performed by individual anonymous knights and dames. As ecumenical Christians, we also seek to increase awareness of conflicts and their causes, and in so doing work towards their future prevention and ultimate peaceful coexistence of all nations. Because our order began its first work in the holy city of Jerusalem in the 12th century, the Holy Land and its cradle of Christianity are of the highest interest to us in this regard, as evidenced by our most recent trip to Jerusalem and our work there with the senior leadership of every Christian church in Jerusalem. Osmth aspires to foster a cosmopolitan society in which differences among peoples, cultures and governments will be both respected and appreciated. We seek the betterment of humanity through education, world brotherhood, chivalric principles and civil behaviour and treatment among one another. Our membership standards are purposely very high, our financial and time commitments are not for everyone, and our dedication to a more caring world requires significant expectations that not everyone can meet. But for those who qualify, the Osmth Knights Templar Order offers an unequalled world-class chivalric order with an international network of some of the most sophisticated and influential professional men and women from over 40 different nations. Here in Canada, we have priories in Windsor, Toronto and Ottawa, all in the province of Ontario, and a commander in Edmonton. We're also in the early stages of working on developing a commandery in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So, there are the kind of three documents I want you to read. I think if you follow all these up, you'll learn whatever you want to learn about Osmth and our work. And I want to turn just briefly to how the order operates. I'm actually the newsletter editor for the Canadian Templar, which is a quarterly publication on behalf of the Grand Prairie of Canada. I've now done 12 issues. The first was launched in December 2012. In there I try to cover all aspects of Templar work based on the Brussels Declaration. So I cover international affairs, financial information, and basically the broad strand of work on an international basis. I will give you a link to this particular page, and that way you can read any of the 12 newsletters, the last of which went up in September 2015. About 60 pages in length. So, on to the order itself, and this is the order within Canada, the Grand Priory of Canada. I should say each of the Grand Priories are autonomous. In other words, they can organise their own priories, the Grand Priories, the way they wish. But on the whole, they adhere to the general vision of Osmth, which is why they become a member of Osmth. But in Canada, if you decide you would interest in becoming a knight or dame, in the newsletter I provide links, email links to each of the current priories and commandery. So if you're in Toronto or the neighbourhood, you could click on the link to the St James Priory, and that will go to our current prior, who will respond and provide whatever information you need. The same applies, I might say, because the main website is osmth.org, and if you go there you will be able to get a contact for every one of the countries that we have Grand Priories in, and you'll be able to send them an email message from there. So, as I say, there is a cost to joining Osmth, and basically if you've decided that you want to join and you're accepted, then you would be knighted, as it were, at the annual investiture of the order of that priory. Now I might add that the annual investiture is actually the only event that is mandatory for you to attend in the year, and it's usually followed by a banquet afterwards. But that's the only event that you have to attend, and if for some reason you can't, you need to seek permission from the prior to be allowed not to attend it. And of course it may be that someone's dying and you have to be there, or maybe you've had a speaking engagement in another country or something on that particular day, and so you just simply can't attend. And again, we're quite reasonable. If there's a decent reason, then you'll be allowed not to attend the event. But on the whole, it's the one event you have to attend. And if you don't attend it and haven't got permission, you can be fined for doing that. Of course, the fine that you have to pay will go to good work, so there is a benefit there. Anyway, when you join the Templars, there's usually something like a $500 entry fee, but that's really because you're provided with a mantle, which is a white cloak with a hood normally, and a giant red cross on it. That's called the mantle. And when you're inducted in as a knight or dame, you're presented with your mantle, and you're also presented with a knight's cross. If I have a copy here, I can show you. It comes in the neck, so we'll go around your neck, and basically this is the Knights Templar cross. And you're also given, in theory, spurs as well, but you don't actually get the spurs. So that's what you get when you're inducted, and of course you will wear the mantle of that at each of the annual investitures. And normally speaking, that's really the only time you wear the mantle when you're going out and about. Now, to get promotion within the order, it's really either service-based or management-based, and it depends how you want to progress within the order. Normally speaking, you'll be looking at progressing in the service side first, and then perhaps move over into the management side, you might say, of the order. So what you're getting is that on the service side, the next promotion you get is to what they call the Knight Commandeur or Knight Commander. And when you do, you get this extra bit given to you, and then you can attach that here. So when you wear that around the neck and you see this bit, you'll see that that means you're a Knight Commander. The next level up from that is what they call Grand Officier or Grand Officer, and in which case you get issued with this starburst, which you then put on your jacket or the dress, and that recognises you as being a Grand Officier. And the final kind of service promotion is to what they call Grand Croix, which is actually the sash that you get. I was trying to remember that word, which basically goes across, and you wear that, and you can put your Knights Templar thing onto the sash as well. But that shows you're a Grand Croix. A Grand Croix is normally only issued to people that will have probably been a prior or will become the Grand Prior, because you need the Grand Croix to actually induct the knights and dames into the order. And of course, if you become a knight or dame, you get knighted. So you kneel down, and the Grand Prior will actually take the sword and will tap each of your shoulders and your head to actually do the knighting. And then you after that you stand up, and the mantle is put around you, and your cross is put on, and you get your heels tapped for the spurs, and basically you get a little blessing from our padre, and that gets you. You become the Knights Templar. Now that normally costs about $500. Because obviously that covers the cost, and your first annual dues. Then your dues thereafter are usually about $250, but that also includes payment for you to attend the banquet after the investiture. So it's certainly not too much money, but you do need to have that money available. Now, if you're actually interested in the management side, the one promotion that you will get at some point is to the Chancellor, to become Chancellor of the Order, who becomes the understudy for the actual Prior. Now normally priors are appointed for 2, maybe 3 years, at the end of which they retire, and the Chancellor will become the next Prior. So you actually understudy them for their period, so you're prepared to take on that role. And of course, as Prior, you're there to induct new members in, but also engage with the order within your own priory to make sure you have various. Usually we'll have meetings every other month, and we may have some. I know in St. James in Toronto, we normally in February have an annual ball, which generally raises over $10,000 for our charitable funds, and it's usually a great event. But we can also have smaller events like garden parties and so forth. And at these events you can invite guests along so they can get exposure to the order and learn a bit about us and so forth. Once you've been a prior, the next position for the prior is really to become the Grand Chancellor, which means you're now the understudy for the Grand Prior. And again, the Grand Prior is normally appointed for maybe 3 years, maybe 4, depending. And after he retires, the Grand Chancellor will become the next Prior. That's the normal way of doing things. So that's how things work within a country. On the international level, you can, of course, go further if you wish. I should point out, though, that being a Prior is okay, but being a Grand Chancellor or Grand Prior, you will need to attend all the annual investitures of all your priories and commanderies. So there's a fair bit of travelling involved. So you must have the time to do that. And also, Canada is a big country, so if you go to Edmonton, you're probably going to fly. And you need to get yourself put up in the local hotel, or sometimes the local prior or one of the local priory might put you up in their home to help defray costs. But essentially, there's time and cost in doing this kind of work. So you do need to have the wherewithal to do that. When you become Grand Prior, there is a considerable extra cost because you now have to attend at least 2 annual meetings internationally. Last year we had an international meeting in Bristol in England. I know that we've just had the international meeting in Germany this year. We've had them in Finland, Belgium, Greece, other countries. So that just goes to show that we don't defray anyone's expenses. You have to come up with the money to get there and put yourself up in the local hotel and everything. I believe it's only the Grand Master himself that gets his expenses defrayed, because obviously he's on the move all the time. So I think he's the only one that gets any expense. Other than that, you need to fund all that yourself. So that's how the order kind of works. To get promoted, you probably need to attend regular events, maybe help. I mean, we do all kinds of things because we support local charities. Like in Toronto, I know we support the local St. James Cathedral's shoe bank, basically, so the homeless can get new shoes or better shoes. We actually have a cooperative service, so they can get their feet attended to when they go there. We support food banks. I think we collect spectacles that people have chucked out because they're getting new glasses, so we collect those and can hand those out. I know one of our priorities collects second-hand hockey equipment and ships it up to the kids up in our northern territories of Canada. And we help out at homeless shelters, maybe women's places and so forth, so we'll help cook the meals and stuff of that nature. We do a whole range of things on a local community basis. We usually will also do some support of national charities, maybe the Salvation Army, for example, or something like that. And then, of course, some of our money will go to the international events. I know, like in Toronto, we have supported doing some rebuilding work of churches in the Holy Land. So we do a wide range of charitable work. And that charitable work goes, I mean, when we had the time of Katrina, for example, Canadians collected something like 50,000 teddy bears, and through our contacts we were able to fly them down to Katrina to give to all the kids that were having a lot of problems down there. So that was one of our philanthropic events that we did. And I know our Canadian forces themselves, I think, were actually on the scene in Katrina before the Americans actually came. We actually have people down there helping very, very quickly. So we do a lot of work internationally. On the international order, we have we actually have priories in the 3 United Nations enclaves of New York City, Geneva and Vienna, and we also have a NATO priory as well internationally. So we're well represented at the world forums. We have done work in Russia, for example. I mean, the past years we got a medical train which went along the Trans-Siberian Railway and called into places and offered surgical and aid and medical help to local villages in the area. So we've done all kinds of things in all places in the world, essentially. One of the features I'll be doing for the December newsletter is one of our own dames, who is a nurse and has served in something like 15 countries in the world, helping out with basic health care in Peru and so forth. So that's the kind of work that we do. If you want to learn a bit more about us, then as I say, I'll put a link to our Canadian Templar page on Electric Canadian site, where you can read the last 12 newsletters. And in the newsletters you'll read about each of our priories, what we've done, but you'll also read a lot of special stories which have an ethical and moral story to tell, some information on the Holy Land and the international strife that's going on, and different views on different subjects, because we don't always take just the Western view of life. We'll take views from Russia as well, for example. So because there's a mix of views in there, it lets you learn things the way you want to, and sometimes some of these articles might surprise you and maybe change your mind on certain things. So that's what we do as an order. So I hope that's been kind of interesting to give you that view of Osmth. And I'll close there, but say when you've watched the video, do look at the text below, because I will provide some key links there if you wish to learn more, and obviously maybe get a copy of that book that I told you about. So thank you for listening, and I hope this has been of interest. Thank you.